Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jason Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by PrizePicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. Folks, welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Sherrod Blakely, joined by Gary Washburn. What you'll notice is the Big Three NBA podcast is one member short. Kwani Lunis, our fearless leader, is feeling a little bit under the weather, so she will not be joining us today, unfortunately. So wishing her a speedy recovery so she can get back into the game. So this is not a load management night for Kwani. She's literally not feeling well. But Gary and I are in the building, talk a little Celtics. And Gary, how you doing?
Oh, wow. You kind of perky today. I'm good.
I'm in my Kwani mode.
Okay, yeah. Everything's good, man. Yeah, everything's good. In Denver, so we'll see how this all goes down here. But yeah, like excited for the rest of this road trip after an interesting matchup the other night. But excited for the rest of the road trip, see how the Celtics respond.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that interesting road night and obviously look ahead as well. But let's just get that out of the way since you brought it up. He's talking about the game at Cleveland, nail-biter type loss. Celtics up by 22, I believe, in the fourth quarter, squandered that lead, which is something we have not seen much of from this team. Typically, when they have a team, pretty much down for the count, they finish them off. Did not happen in Cleveland. And Gary, just what your take, what the hell happened in the fourth quarter? Because we have not seen the Celtics pull that kind of choke job this season.
Yeah, it was certainly, you could call it definitely a choke job. I felt like it was too easy for them. Mm-hmm. And when Jason Tatum put back up at 93-71, I think they felt like Cleveland was done and they're going to start putting in the into the bench and okay, we got them. And then it was just a really kind of unassuming run. At first it was, 8-0, and then it was like then I turned into 14-2, and it's like, okay, guys, like, you're up 10 now with 5 minutes left. That's plenty of time. And then Dean Wade happened, and I just felt like they were just punch drunk. They missed a lot of shots they should have made. Mm-hmm. They did not play good defense down the stretch in the fourth quarter, letting Wade kind of walk into some threes that he should not have been able to walk into. And I just saw the Mazzulla say, oh, he's a pretty good shooter. He's 39% from three. He's a little better than pretty good, and you can downplay it and, oh, we didn't do this, or you can blame the ref. Some people were blaming the refs after the call at the end of the game, but the Celtics never should have been there.
Right.
They should own that loss, learn from it, and move on and figure out better fourth quarter execution. Tatum dribbling the clock out. We've seen this before. Takes on three guys. Derek White is wide open at the 3-point. If you just pass it to Derek White and you miss a three at the buzzer or whatever, you'll take that. You'll say, hey, good 3-point shooter, had a wide open look, nobody in the vicinity, let him take that. But Tatum decides to do the Kobe thing again, take on three guys, doesn't get fouled. I just thought that was one of the more egregious late game plays by Tatum that we've seen over the years. I thought that was one of his worst.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Jason, and again, one of the best players in the NBA, no one is disputing that, but he has had those moments in the fourth quarter where he has not been top five Tatum. He's been more like bottom five Tatum. And Derek White, as you pointed out, has been among the better efficient fourth quarter scorers, not just on the Celtics, but in the league. He has been one of, if not certainly one of their better late game scorers. And you, as you were talking about Dean Wade, they made Dean Wade look like D Wade, the way he was just controlling things down the stretch. That should never happen. You should never, other than just the fact that they have names that sound similar, actually compare those two. But he had that kind of impact. And again, it raises the question, and one of my big concerns is that when you get to the playoffs, and Gary, we've seen enough playoff games where you're going to have your share of games that come down to the wire. Is Tatum going to still pull the Kobe card and try to be that guy, or is he going to make this what I think is the better basketball play and find one of your guys who's probably wide open, and particularly if it's a guy like Derek White, who has shown the ability to make big plays, big clutch shots. What do you anticipate as we get into the playoffs and Tatum finds himself in similar situations where he can either be that guy and take that shot or be the facilitator and get it to a teammate?
Yeah, Tatum's got to take this game and learn from it. Like, he's the one the most who needs to learn from it, because he just can't keep doing this 1-on-3. It's becoming way too predictable, way too easy to defend. If you look at the play, Garland was on him, then Jared Allen faded over. Jalen is just standing there. You have no actions. There's just one dude dribbling the ball, dribble. It's like this James Harden, James Harden 2016. You know, the new video game on the scene. You want to be James? This is James. Dribble, shoot. Like, Jalen was standing there, Derek was standing there, like, Kristaps is under the rim. Like, you got teammates, man. Like, quit doing this.
Right.
Quit doing this. And then Joe didn't call a timeout. Then, I'll try to call one at 4.6. They didn't hear me. Like, that's your fault, Joe. Jump onto the court, screen,
see what happened was
cabbage patch, do whatever you need to do to get the referee's attention, to get Zach Zarba's attention, call timeout if you don't see things going. You cannot, and then, you finish the game with 2 timeouts. Does that mean you get 9 for the Denver game? No, you don't get to take them over. You can't take them with you. You don't get 2 extra ones. Come on, Joe. Call a timeout. Call a timeout during that run. It got real bad before you got to take sometimes what the veteran coaches do. When it was 8-0, I would have boom.
Yeah.
It went from 93-71, 93-79. Okay, guys, like, y'all done messed around too much. This is okay. Let's stop this. 8-0. It's a 14-point game with 6 minutes left or whatever it was. That's plenty. Okay, that's plenty of time within the rally, which they did. So you call a timeout. You see the avalanche. You see the damn snowball gathering steam, getting bigger, and and I said, Joe hasn't really done that much this year, but I don't know what it was like. 2023 Joe, 2020 Tatum. It was like everybody was going back in the time machine. It's like, no, Joe, call a timeout. You see, we've lost focus. It's 93-79 now. They hit a couple of trays. They done got some momentum. Let's call a timeout, get a good ATO, play maybe some defensive adjustments, whatever. Nope. You let it get to, I forgot, I could check Sherrod when he called the timeout, but it was way too late. Let me see here. When he called the timeout.
I just wonder, though, Gary.
He called the timeout, Sherrod, when it was 97-94.
Like, damn.
Yeah.
Damn. I thought he called it earlier. Here's the thing, though. This is what, as I'm
looking.
Right.
89.
You know what, Gary? I wonder, though, Gary, if Joe found himself almost seduced by what I think the players were seduced by, and that is no Donovan. And whether they figured, you know what, they're going to make a little run, but they're going to run out of steam. We'll be able to finish them off because they don't have their closer. They don't have their alpha. And I wonder, does Joe from time to time get caught up in that same, you know what, these guys are going to figure this out. I mean, they're too good, and that other team does not have that dude. Like, there's a part of me that thinks that if, let's say, Donovan Mitchell was playing and they were making that kind of run, Joe would have probably called the timeout sooner because he knows how good Donovan is. We all know how good Donovan is, but Dean Wade is not D Wade, and I just wonder if Joe, without realizing it, got kind of caught up in that. These guys aren't basically Joe getting caught up in the things that he tries to guard against, and that is taking an opponent for granted. I wonder if he took the situation that they were in for granted. Like, he didn't sense that we're in trouble of potentially losing this game if we don't right the ship right now. I don't know if he had that sense of urgency that he needed.
He didn't. I mean, look at this, Sherrod, 93-71. Okay. Then D Wade. Let's just call him D Wade for the night.
Let's just call him D Wade. Because that's who he was. He was D Wade.
D Wade hits a three, 93-74. Karis LeVert, layup, 93-76. D Wade, another three, 93-79. That's the perfect time. But okay,
right.
Fournette comes back with a layup. Then Okoro hits a three, 95-82.
Oh, no, if he's hitting threes, that's when you know you got a problem.
Then a couple of misses, and then George's name, another three, 95-85. It's 10 now, Sherrod. Okay, with 6 minutes left, plenty of time, 6:27. So you're saying, okay, Joe, call it, stop this thing. It's now 14-2. Okay, it's down to 10. And they trade baskets, and then later on, let's go 97-88. Okay, it's 10. Then D Wade again, 3. Tatum comes back and misses a 3. D Wade again, 3. It's a 3-point game. Then he calls a timeout. That's what last year's Joe did. Yeah. Like that's not good execution. You have 2 more left after that. So you could use, I know he always says, I want to save 2 timeouts for the last few minutes or whatever, but call it earlier, stop the momentum. When it was 10, boom. To me, I'd have called it an 8-0 run. 93, I was watching the game, I'm like, 93-79, okay, that's close. That's a little too close, okay? Like they're starting to make a run. Then it turns into 10. It's like, okay, like keep it going. I don't know what goes, like the let's work ourselves out of it. No, you're trying to get a dub. You got an 11-game winning streak. It's a really bad loss if you lose this. Like, take the precautions. Treat this like a game. You're starting a longest road trip for the rest of the season, 5 games. You want to get a dub here. This might be, Portland will probably be the easiest game. At Utah on a back-to-back could be tough, but this is a game without 3 starters you got to take. Yeah. And you up 22. Like, treat this like, no, we're not messing with this. They messed with the game. Joe messed with the game, and the guys on the floor messed with the game. And they missed some shots, 0 for 8 and from the 3 in the fourth quarter. And Cleveland hit 8 threes in the fourth quarter. That's going to get you an L.
Yeah, it will.
Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's a tournament season or the fight for a playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. Testing my skills on PrizePicks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. PrizePicks is really simple to play, and I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Use the code CLNS for the first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
One of the things that we have, I think, noticed and talked about a lot with this team is Joe Mazzulla. And this was, I think this was definitely not one of his better games. If you look at what he's done with this season in its totality, I think Joe's done a good job. I think he's done a good job. And this, to me, this was kind of one of those kind of, one-offers where it's just not, he just didn't have it. He just didn't have his good stuff. And I'm just wondering, Gary, just kind of get your take, because you're around Joe a lot and you love Joe. Joe loves you. We know that. Everyone knows that. Should we be giving Joe some Coach of the Year love? Because you don't really hear his name come much in that conversation, even though he's the coach of the team with the best record in the NBA, and they by the best record by a pretty damn wide margin. What do you think about that? I mean, should we be giving Joe a little more love when it comes to that Coach of the Year conversation?
We should, but he won't because of the talent on the team. And you look at the jump. Remember, the Celtics won 57 games last year, so they almost won 60 and probably could have won 60 with some better execution down the stretch. I mean, they blew some games last year. They still won 57 games. So if they win 63, 64, that's a good jump. But you look at Manigault, I always butcher the name, Oklahoma City coach.
He's from Massachusetts too.
Yeah. Yeah. He's up for it, and Chris Finch, because Minnesota's finally taken that leap into the upper echelon of the Western Conference. And Minnesota's always been an underachieving team for the last several years, and this year they're not underachieving. They're probably overachieving. So I think those are the top two candidates for Coach of the Year. Do I think Mazzulla should get some votes? Of course I do. And then there's no one else in the East really. You might throw some at Rick Carlisle for what Indiana, being a respectable club this year. Mm-hmm. But if you look, those are the three candidates I look at. And I'm looking at Mike Malone, but Denver had expectations. There's nobody you looking at and you're like, wow, that's Coach of the Year. It just isn't enough. King. So those are the three candidates to me. And of course, I think Joe should get some votes. I think he has had Coach of the Year kind of capabilities. But I think if you look at the other two teams, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, fighting for the first place in the West, they both have made significant jumps. And I just think they will get those two coaches will get more consideration.
They'll get a lot. They'll definitely. I think those are probably the ones that are going to make the short list of legitimate Coach of the Year candidates. But I want to throw another name out there just because of the job that I think he's done this year that has exceeded expectations, particularly when you look at some of the injuries they've been able to overcome. It's a team we just saw the other night, the Cavs. JB has done a damn good job with that crew. I mean, when you look at the core guys that they have been playing without at various stages of this season for extended periods of time, it's not like guys miss a game here and there. I mean, Mobley, who was one of their kind of franchise cornerstone pieces, has missed a ton of games. And Donovan hasn't missed a ton of games, but he's missed enough to where you feel his presence when he's not there. But they have been one of the teams that has found a way to be in that short list of top-tier teams in the East. Now, do I think they'll do much in the playoffs? No. And I don't feel that. I feel that they are about as close to reaching their maximum as you could possibly be. And I look at a team like the Celtics. I look at teams like Milwaukee. I see those teams having the potential to get better than they are right now. And they're pretty damn good. But JB, he's probably the only other guy that you did mention that I would probably throw in a conversation just because, again, the way he has been able to kind of galvanize that team, win some games that they ain't supposed to win, like the win over the Celtics, and do it in a time when they've had so many core guys out with injuries. So he would be the only one I would consider.
And for the note, for the record, Sherrod, our friend D Wade tonight against the Atlanta Hawks, 9 points, 3 for 8 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3.
Oh, so Dean. So in other words, the clock struck midnight. Dean Wade is back in the building.
Exactly. So
Dean Wade is gone.
And so you could say that you could kind of attribute that that it just was one of those nights for a guy, and it was 9 points. He played 30 minutes, and I said and they lost at Atlanta. So that huge win, and this is great. They lose to the Hawks. They were 10 for 44 from the 3-point line. Sam Merrill 0 for 9, Garland 3 for 11, Okoro 1 for 5, and D Wade, our friend, 1 for 6. So the NBA it's a brutal, unfair league. It makes no friends. So one night you're a hero, the next night you're a bum, and so that's just kind of how it goes. And so if you're looking for any, for Southern fan looking for any reason to kind of smile, that D Wade did not have a D Wade night. He's back to Dean Wade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of games that really piss fans off. when you allow a guy who is, a pretty average NBA player, and I think I'm being generous when I call him average, has this just off the charts type of performance against your team, who's supposed to be really good. And then he goes and play a team like Atlanta that, no disrespect. Well, yeah, I am going to disrespect them. They're trash. They're not very
One of the
good.
worst defensive teams in the league, and
And your boy
back to back,
right.
and all the momentum, and we beat the Celtics and all that. Yeah, but that's the league.
It is.
Sometimes what you have to do, Sherrod, is respond and react when guys are having those types of nights. And I felt like the Celtics defense had not reacted. If the guy is hot, you've got to guard him differently. You can't just wait for him to shoot himself tired.
It was almost like they treated Dean Wade the way the Warriors treated Jaylen Brown.
Yes, very much so. I mean, it wasn't any emphasis. He was the only one scoring. If you look at that fourth quarter, I think he had 20. They scored 31 points, and he had 20 of them. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like somebody else was lighting them up. Some other guys, Okoro's and Niang and Garland, had their moments. But if you look at the fourth quarter, he had 20 points. Niang had 6. Okoro 3. Garland had a point. So you didn't – Cleveland starters in the fourth quarter scored 6 points. It was just Dean Wade. That's crazy.
Damn.
But what we need to talk about, too, is that fourth quarter for Jaylen Brown, no shots in 5 minutes. Jason Tatum, 1 for 8. They were awful. They have to work on that. I mean, I'm not saying that they're terrible at it consistently, but they have to be more consistent than this. And they got they got to the free throw line once in the fourth quarter. They took 10 more shots in the fourth quarter than Cleveland and still got outscored 34-17. So they had 10 more chances to score than the Cavaliers did. But the Cavaliers had 8 free throws. They missed 4, whatever. But you got to win that game. You got to seal the deal in that game.
Well, the stat, Gary, that you mentioned, that to me is maybe the most telling and damning of what they did in the fourth, was Jaylen Brown. Not a single shot. He played more than 5 minutes, and I'm looking at his lineup. He didn't record a single stat. Not a single, no rebounds, no assists, no turnovers, nothing. It was as if he was literally a ghost on the floor. And I'm sorry, but $300 million baller, all NBA caliber player, coming on the kind of game he had, and the way that he was player of the week. He was a damn player of the week. And you don't get a single shot off in the fourth. But Gary, and this is not the first time, probably won't be the last time, we see Jaylen, for whatever reasons, is not involved in what they do in the fourth quarter. And I can't quite put my finger on why that is. What's your take on why Jaylen has this tendency? And I don't put it all on Jaylen, but there's something that doesn't feel right when a guy that as good as Jaylen Brown is just becomes this non-factor in every sense of the word when the fourth quarter rolls around.
Yeah, they got to call more actions for him. They got to get him more involved. They got to get him more into and open things up for other guys, right? Mm-hmm. Open things up for Tatum when Brown has got it going too. And here's another thing I had a problem with Joe. Joe waited until 5 minutes and 14. So Joe waited until the lead got from 23 to 9 to insert his 3 starters back in the game.
Porzingis and D-White?
He let Pritchard, Cornette, and Horford go most of that run, right? Yeah. And if that lineup isn't working, then you got to make some changes. You can't wait till a 23-point lead gets to 9. Mm-hmm. Then those guys are cold. They've sat since the whole fourth quarter, and now you're expecting them to go in there and light it up and bring you home. And then what happened? Porzingis comes in the game cold, shoots a 31-foot three-pointer and misses, and then D. Wade, who he was last night, comes back and counters with another 3, and it's a 6-point game. You're throwing your starters into a highly competitive game when they've been sitting in a whole quarter.
Yeah, more than half of the quarter they were on the bench. Mm-hmm.
Call an earlier timeout when it's 14 or 13 or even 12, and like get those guys in, because he waited till 5:14. When does Jalen only play 5 minutes of a fourth quarter of a competitive game?
Yeah, I go back to just
And I get
again
it. He was trying early in the quarter. He's like, well, do I need to put him back in? So yeah, when it's 93-74 after with 9 minutes left, you don't put him back in. But when it's 95-85 with 6:27 left, and okay, we're in a competitive game now. You timeout, guys, get back in, bring us home. But he played, another minute and a half and or whatever with the bench, and then brought those guys in really cold. And of course, they didn't score. I think Porzingis already had 2 points in that fourth quarter. Let me look here. And White did not score, took 1 shot, and Brown did not score, took 0 shots. Right. So the 3 starters you put in, 2 of them didn't score, right, because they were probably cold. So you're relying on Tatum, and Tatum is off. Tatum is 1 for 8 in the quarter.
So the entire fourth quarter.
Yes, a lot. So it's a lot to unpack in that fourth quarter to me, with kind of going back to last year's Joe.
Yeah. Well, it brings us really kind of up to the game that everyone has been looking forward to on this road trip, and that's Denver, which is where you're at. The Nuggets, the defending NBA champions, they're having another solid season. They're right in the mix of that top 4, top 5 teams in the West. They're a team that, and there's no one really wants to feel that smoke from Denver, because they've got the most impactful player on the floor. Jokic has the ability to control the boards as a rebounder, as a facilitator, can shoot from outside, can shoot on the block. He can do pretty much everything you want a player to do, which, it gives credence to why he is a 2-time league MVP. What are you expecting to see when the Celtics face them? Because this is a game that, and we've talked about it and we've read about it, we've watched it. This is a game that most people believe will be a precursor to the NBA Finals. How do you see this game playing out?
Wow, that's I think it'll be a very competitive game. But Denver's vulnerable. Denver got just beat the other night at home by Phoenix. Phoenix controlled most of the game, so I'm expecting kind of an NBA Finals preview, like you said, and I'm expecting the Celtics, which they should, come out really angry. And I'm expecting the Celtics to say, listen, we ain't playing no games, another national TV game, and we need to come out with some fire. And we need to not only punch first, but punch last. So I expect a highly competitive game. Forget the altitude. Don't use no excuses. You got a day off to get, they got to shoot around tomorrow morning to get used to the air, the thinner air, and they need to play ball. And they lost already earlier to Denver. And if they lose this game, then it's like, well, the Celtics are, struggled against the top teams in the West. 0-1 against Oklahoma City, 1-1 against Minnesota, and now 0-2 against Denver. So the Celtics need to make a statement. And they made a statement against the Golden State Warriors. That was really positive. I thought that was like, they came out like, we're not playing around with y'all. We ain't playing no games. They need to come out the same fire. Same. It's going to be a much harder game. They got that dude in the middle, Jokic. They got Jamal Murray. They got Aaron Gordon. They got KCP. They got weapons. Michael Porter Jr. So they're playing at home, and they're going to be fired up too, because they just coming off a loss. So 2 teams coming off a loss, know that they might see each other in June. I expect a great game.
Yeah, and baked within that game is the individual accolades and honors and things that players certainly want to have. Jokic, he doesn't talk about it, but a third MVP is very within his grasp. A strong performance against the Celtics would certainly bolster his chances of that. And on the flip side, Tatum, who's just been kind of flying below the radar most of the season as far as like an MVP candidate per se, this game could go very far in bolstering his chances. What are you anticipating we'll see from both of those guys? And who do you think will have the better game when they play?
I mean, I gotta put everything. Tatum has got to prove himself. Like, he was not good in the second half against Cleveland, and he's taken a lot of shots over the last couple of days as not being a good closer. And that stat that he's one of the worst closers in the league, with a minimum of 45 shot attempts in these clutch situations. He's got to bring it. Like, I'm gonna put everything on Tatum. Tatum has got to bring it. He's got to be MVP Jason on the biggest stage. Here it is, Denver. And the next, a couple nights later, Phoenix. It's not going to get, they got a couple of games against Milwaukee, but these are the biggest stages that he needs to show. And he showed it last night in the first half, and then, kind of like the rest of his teammates, kind of chilled. And there's got to be some fire in Jason. There's got to be something in Jason that is like, okay, man, I dropped the bag on this one. 1 for 11 in the second half, a minus 20. Like,
Wow.
Unacceptable. 4 points. Like, like he's got to be better. And it was only 0 for 3 from the three, so it was a bunch of layups and mid-rangers. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't chucking threes up there. I mean, he was missing at the rim. He was missing from those mid-range, he's usually really good. So, and it's one of those wacky games. It's probably never going to happen again like that in terms of one guy like a D Wade who's going nuts and half the Celtics can't make a shot. But I think Tatum needs to be the one who looks at this game as, this is my proven game. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the thing about Tatum is this. I fully expect him to be really good for the first 3 quarters, and maybe a little bit more than the 3 quarters. But in the fourth quarter, I'm hoping at some point he embraces the fact that his role as a decoy / facilitator is at its absolute best down the stretch. Derek White is better at finishing in terms of scoring in clutch situations. Porzingis is better at finishing in clutch situations than Tatum. And when you have those two guys on the floor with you for a decent amount of time in the fourth quarter, that should allow him to use the attention that he's going to get to open things up for those guys. And for the life of me, I don't understand why Jaylen Brown doesn't get the rock more. Because it feels as though when they're on offense in the fourth quarter, it's not like Jaylen isn't making himself available for the rock. It feels as though they're literally looking for everything but matchups involving Jaylen Brown. And if I'm Jaylen Brown, it's just like, okay, I got 27 points, but damn, I got 27 points in 3 quarters. I get like, what, maybe 2 in the fourth? I would love for them to look for him a little bit more. And again, I keep telling myself, and I'm probably just, playing tricks on myself, that they're planning to do the things that make sense when the playoff rolls around. Like Jaylen Brown can have it cooking for 3 quarters. Why not have him finish the meal off and just cook these fools for 1 more quarter and just call it a night? And I'm waiting for that moment where Tatum embraces the fact that maybe on certain nights down the stretch, less Tatum is more successful or is more for the team. And it's no shade at Tatum because he's a hell of a player. But there's a reason why Wick and ownership was willing to spend all that damn money on these players, because they know they're good. And the thing about Drew Holiday, the thing about Jaylen Brown, the thing about D. Wyatt and Porzingis, they've been pretty damn good down the stretch. They're better than Tatum down the stretch. And Tatum, I think, at some point needs to embrace that reality. He's a great player, but in clutch situations, up to this point in his career, he has not been very good. And go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, it may be if he set up his teammates, it would be better for him offensively to get the ball back,
right?
To give it up. And like our friend, the great David Aldridge said the other day, I was talking to him, and he said Jordan didn't win a title till he passed the ball to John Paxson. And then after that, Steve Kerr. Like, when 3 dudes are on you, Jason, and you got your reliable 3-point shooting teammate sitting there looking at you, pass him the ball. you know, and that's the thing. That's the whole thing that people are going to be asking. Who's going to take the shot when it counts in the playoffs? Is Jason trying to atone for 2022 finals? Does Jason want to prove to everybody that he's the man? He's the MVP. And I think he got a little bit too much of that. Well, I thought I got fouled. Jason, you took a very difficult shot. Like that wasn't a real late game foul to me. Did he get fouled? He could have gotten fouled, but that was such a poor shot selection that you want to credit him. They almost got bailed out, but I think if Jason sets up Jalen, sets up Derek, sets up Drew, he's going to get the ball back. They're harder to guard, as opposed to Jason. Take on 3 defenders and try to see if you can hit a fadeaway 19-footer. How has that worked? It has not worked. No. And I said, like, he's a great player. We all know that. It's not taking away his greatness. And clutch gene is sometimes gained, but it's also being a good teammate. Look at LeBron James. LeBron, remember that you were there, that night he passed to Donyell Marshall. Yeah. And he got flack because he made the right bat. That now, 15 years ago when it happened, or 07, right? Yeah. Something like that, 07. Because I remember I was at I was covering the signs. I was at the draft combine. That's the year they drafted. That's the year they drafted KD, right? So, it was me, our friend, the late Sekou Smith, and a couple guys at a bar in Orlando watching the game when he threw the ball to Donyell. And 17 years ago, that was considered like crazy. But now, it's the right bat. I think we appreciate passing more than we did back then. That was like the superstar does not pass the ball like that. No.
But the funny thing about that, though, Gary, is that, one of the great dynasties in our lifetime was the San Antonio Spurs. And when you talk about clutch shots, it wasn't Tim Duncan. It wasn't Tony Parker. It wasn't Manu Ginobili. It was freaking Robert Horry. That was the guy that delivered the dagger. And to me, that whole franchise embodied what team basketball should be about. You can have 3 great players who can dominate for 3.5 quarters, but if your best player in clutch moments isn't one of those 3 players, use the attention they get to get your clutch guy open. Just the shot that Robert Horry hit in 2005, when the Pistons were going for the repeat, where my man Rasheed Wallace, that's my dude, that's my dog for life, he gave Manu Ginobili a little too much attention, and they got the ball to Robert, who just hit a major back-breaking shot. That shot doesn't go down. That shot isn't taken. Detroit wins back-to-back titles. But the point is, you have to trust your teammates. And to me, I would think it's easier to trust your teammates when they've literally shown you they have that ability. I mean, Derek White can make clutch shots. Porzingis can make clutch shots. Jaylen Brown has made clutch shots. And Jason, to your point, Gary, I do think that if you start getting those guys in position to make plays down the stretch, that ball is going to become a boomerang. And it's going to come right back to you. And you're going to be able to contribute and frankly, build up your late game DNA, your late game credibility. Because right now, if we're talking about like late game clutch situations and we treated it like it's a credit score, Jason, I'm just saying, he ain't rocking no 800. He's not gonna live in no Wellesley. I'm not gonna say what cities he would have to live in, but he would not be living in no Wellesley or no Newton or something like that.
He ain't qualifying for that loan.
He will not get that loan. But if you build your credit up, get the other guys involved, build your credit up little by little. I can't stress this enough how amazingly awesome he is as a player. And Jason Tatum, I'm just going to say, he will be a Hall of Famer. I mean, that dude he's at that point now where if he decided he just wanted to walk away from the game of basketball, he becomes a borderline Hall of Famer at the age of 26. When you look at All-Stars, you look at all the records that he is the youngest to do this, that, and the other in the Celtics franchise. With that being said, he still has room to get better. And that room that, to me, just screams we need to grow is his clutchness. He's a great player, but he does not deliver in the clutch the way he wants to, and certainly the Celtics need to. But the good news for the Celtics is they don't necessarily need him to be that guy, because they got 3 or 4 other guys who can do that. And so they need to figure that out, because that may cost them a game or two in the playoffs. That might be the difference between them winning a championship or not.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I mean, it was a lot to pick at from that game. It's one game, so you move on. They got, 20 plus more in the regular season to finish, 21 more. Mm-hmm. So you don't just point out that game, but it did bring back some memories from last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And you hope that they've made some adjustments over the last 48 hours to get ready for Denver and make sure that situation doesn't happen again, where it's dribble, taking on 3 defenders, because that's just not the way to win.
Right. Absolutely not. They've got more games to play, and we've got more podcasts to deliver for our folks. Always a pleasure hanging out with my boy G Money, Gary Washburn of the Boston Globe, here on the NBA Big Three NBA podcast. One more shout out to our girl Kwani, and hope she gets better soon. Also want to shout out our sponsors, Indeed.com, HelloFresh, and PrizePicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network. And again, appreciate you, Gary. We'll catch up after the Denver game and see where that stands. And thanks for tuning in to the Big Three NBA podcast. We out.
See you soon, folks.